Yeah,
Right.
you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Who is it that you were saying you were listening to?
David Webb. If you're familiar with him, he's on Patriot on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
He's conservative black talk show host, but he always gets accused of white privilege.
Oh, yeah, they're always on him about, yeah.
And he lives for that. He just loves it when somebody does
He
that.
just eggs him on, eggs him.
Yeah.
He's funny.
But they're at that CPAC thing in DC right now. And a young, I think she's a millennial or just past millennial age, black woman who's conservative went out after the day's meetings to this restaurant, and she had a MAGA cap on or something, red MAGA hat on. And another black woman from the other side of the restaurant walked all the way over, got right in her face, screaming obscenity, calling her every name in the book, racist terms, everything. Called her a traitor to her race for wearing a MAGA hat.
Wow.
And the bartender came over and said that she had to leave. Not the woman that.
Yeah, she had to leave.
Yeah. So they left, and even had a taxi cab in the street pulled over, and the guy pointed and laughed at him, for wearing that hat.
Wow.
So they were talking about that yesterday on the program.
Must have been Bernie country.
Well, they were just outside of DC in Maryland, I believe it was.
Exactly.
So, well, yes, it was. Yeah, it's kind of sad that the left's idea of civil discourse is screaming in your face obscenities and all kinds of names. They can't agree to disagree or have a friendly conversation about it.
They're expert at labeling,
Yeah, exactly.
not based on facts, they just assertions,
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and no one dares challenge them.
Right.
on that website up.
Yeah.
My son said if you get on there and you find some jobs you'd like to apply for, he said there'll be a questionnaire on there,
Okay.
And he says if they ask you like, do you know anything about computers? You say, oh yeah, well, I invented the computer. So by all means embellish. I mean, don't be afraid to embellish because that's the only way to get an interview.
Well, it's because you're dealing with the government.
I'm sorry?
I said embellish because you're dealing with the government.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have this running.
Well, I made it. Since I've been here, and some guy in the men's room is still in there, so I just went to the ladies' room. I said, I gotta do something with my hair. So
Well, you went to the right room. You didn't do your hair.
I didn't know where to stand all day, and it's my hair was kind of.
I'm surprised when they redid did the renovation. That they didn't just put, most places are just going to unisex bathrooms if they're single bathrooms, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Target the other day. They had men's, women's, and unisex. That'd be kind of embarrassing if it was kind of an emergency and you had to get into the unisex, and when you're coming out, you run into all your friends or something. It's a long story.
Well, this is taking a few minutes. It's not moving fast today.
Pretty good.
Worthy of the name. It's about halfway.
copy on the left is a strong one.
Thank you.
Okay. One that one there for you.
Honey, I have a coffee cup over there ready for us.
Okay.
Well, wish I was here last week to remind you, yesterday was Veterans Day at the IX Center for the Car Show.
Yeah, I know, I found out about it after I went.
Oh,
Went Tuesday.
oh, yeah, and, it was cold and the snow was kicking in around 4 o'clock when I got there, and I was surprised, the place was dead.
Really?
Yeah, it was really dead for Thursday night.
Yeah, well, we went, it was Monday morning or Tuesday morning. They had a lineup.
Did they?
It was early in the morning,
Okay.
people lining up to get tickets.
Yeah.
So, it was quite busy. Take a good look at that mid-engine vent.
No, but I was looking at the, one of my favorite cars was always the Shelby, Mustang Shelby, which was a 717 horse.
And when they raffled off, when they were raffling off.
Oh, I didn't even stop for that. I just don't give out my name and number.
Oh, you're talking about the new Shelby Mustang,
Yes,
710 horsepower.
Yeah.
81,000.
then they got the Hellcat, like Chrysler,
Yes,
that puts out,
that's a 790 or 793, I think.
I don't know, the brochure I got, it was just a little bit more than the Shelby, like
Did you-
maybe 735, what was printed. But it puts out something like 635,
Motor Trend did an article on the Camaro with the 640 horse, and the Mustang with the 780 or whatever it was, and then of course the
Hellcat.
Chrysler Hellcat. And the Hellcat was the heaviest of them.
Yeah, 4,400 pounds,
It was the most expensive of them.
78,000.
Uh,
I'm just checking.
It had more horsepower, more torque, and yet, and the Camaro was the least
Isn't that
of
something?
all in horsepower, in weight, in cost, in everything. And they were all within the tenth of a second.
Isn't that amazing?
Speed.
Yeah. I do like the looks of the
I got it.
Mustang,
1,700, yeah.
although the Hellcat's kind of.
You just see the one that I.
Yeah.
The raw power it puts out, and it has, it's basically a Chrysler product, and all the other high performance cars have a heat sink automatic. But the Hellcat has some kind of unusual transmission, it did say 8-speed or 10-speed or
I did
anything
not
like that.
take a look at it, I didn't notice. But I'm a GM guy, I worked for GM
Yeah.
for 40 years, so I'm gonna buy GM.
Yeah, there you go.
But I like the Camaro, I'm a Camaro guy anyway. always.
And I was disappointed, I guess they don't make the Impala anymore.
Nope, I did away with it.
And 3-4 years ago, Consumer Report rated the Chevy Impala with all the improvements, one of the nicest cars out there. And they said that it compares to some of the European luxury cars that are like 30,000 more than the Chevy Impala. And so I was like shocked they quit making it.
We were all shocked to hear
Yeah,
why nobody could figure out what. Was they're just, they're just putting all their money in. I know they got a new electric car coming out.
right.
I think we're gonna go ahead and trade here.
And
Start it here.
1,000 horsepower.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have high-end torque. Listen to this, and this really got my attention.
all right, okay, we're gonna go ahead and pray that real quick.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, I want to thank you again for giving us a place to meet tonight. Thank you for each one that's here. Pray for those that might yet be on their way, Lord. Pray that you would bless our time, our fellowship this evening, Lord.
Father, thank you for the refreshment. Bless them as well. And bless the time we spend in your word. Just again, open it up to us. Just lift up and glorify Christ through it. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I think that coffee's getting about ready over there. So,
Go ahead.
all right. Just interrupting there so you we'll start here now. We get your coffee and stuff.
Jeep, Chrysler, I guess, owns. And Jeep has a Jeep Cherokee that they use the same engine as the Hellcat, but it has about 10 horsepower less. And it has like 635 horses. And
Twist that thing into a pretzel, that's unibody.
and I was shocked.
When we went to that,
It's a
that Red Sea
Chrysler Cherokee.
movie,
with a-
How was it?
I mean, they got about 3 different engines. You get 4 different engines.
Yeah.
All the way up.
This one sold out.
700 horsepower.
Hmm.
It's just crazy.
It is.
Well, that's good.
it's coming in 2
But
parts.
it looks like a
Mhm.
sleeper. You never know it's a.
No.
The thing is, there's
That's kind of neat.
3 options. Is did it happen close to Egypt? Did it happen at the Suez, or did it happen at the Gulf of Aqaba?
Mm-hmm.
And the Egyptian premises that happened close, shallow water, wind could have done it. And the Gulf of Aqaba option is because Moses was in the land of Midian
Right.
for 40 years,
Which
which
would
on
have
the other
been
side of
The Arabian
Aqaba,
Peninsula.
right, not the Sinai Peninsula. So the Mountain of God might have been in Saudi Arabia, not in Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they could have gone around the north end of the Aqaba and stayed on land the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
So why did God direct them down there? Because I think he knew he was going to be chased by these Egyptians. He says, okay, they want to follow us? They'll follow us right into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of solved maybe 2 problems at once.
Well, it's a lot easier to drown the entire Egyptian army in a 100 foot of water than it is in a shallow sea.
Right.
Yeah, because if you think about it, there's also I've seen 3 locations for crossing the Gulf of Aqaba presented. One of them was up toward north, and you think, well, if they were that far north, why didn't they just go around in the dry land there? The other one is the one that I think it was. They're sort of the middle, where you have this beach area on both sides and that ridge. And then another one suggested is down toward the southern end of the Gulf of Aqaba. There's the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula going across to the Arabian Peninsula. There's like some reefs and some an island or 2, and they think that they were suggesting that they could have went across there. If the water level dropped for some reason, they could have went across there. But I like the idea of the one that's more in the middle, because you would have had 100 and some feet of water probably, and it's a lot easier to drown the Egyptian army in that than in a shallow area.
Yeah, what does it say about the Egyptian army if you're drowning them in 3 inches of water?
That women and children had no problem going through. It's not saying much for the army.
Well, it's God's judgment on that whole system of deities. they have.
Right. And like you said, the 10 plagues against a number of Egyptian deities, and then that final drowning of the Egyptian army, they were proud of their military. They've been the greatest militaries. And they're trusting in their military strength, their military might, and that's judged as well. And
No, I heard that the locusts are spreading. I think it was the Congo or Zaire that they went into just this week.
and they're making their way into China. China is, and I just saw the headline. I don't know if it was a spoof headline or a real one. China was trying to get some particular bird, I think it was, that they thought would eat these locusts. But there are just so many of them.
Well, I I got to see a feeding frenzy on locusts by chickens.
Oh,
We
the,
had that local, we had the locust thing around
cicada
here.
thing, yeah. Oh, they love them, they just gobble them up.
Oh, they didn't, well, they don't even, I was gonna say, they don't even chew them, they don't have teeth anyway, but
Yeah.
it was just gone.
Mhm.
As fast as they could grab them, they were gone. And they would fight over them.
Mhm.
Chickens would actually, whip on one another to get at it. It was really amazing.
That's interesting because see the cicadas, when they come up like that, they don't eat anything. Their body is filled with a fat store, which gives them the energy to do all that they do, climb up and then fly around and make all that noise and the mating and all that and laying the eggs. But they don't eat anything because all the time they're in the ground, they're eating for, all them years. But these other locusts, now those, the true locusts, they're just eating everything in sight. So,
I know the farmers sure good when they come around.
yeah, 'cause they eat everything, yeah. Now, I missed the last what you said.
In the thirties, when we had bad cases of locusts.
Ooh, during the Dust Bowl era, that kind of led to it, didn't it? It contributed to tasty.
So is there anything there worth looking at?
I haven't gone through the whole thing,
Well, I'm just curious.
but yes, I came across one thing, they want a PhD. I can't fake having a PhD. So,
Why don't you just say, I feel like I have one? How can they argue? Hey, Audie, how can they argue with that? Just say, I feel like I'm a PhD.
engineering professions are not as susceptible to such, loosey-goosey thinkers.
But it's a government site, so. Gotcha on that one.
Did they have a definition for their acronym?
How are you?
Which one?
PhD.
Oh,
I'll hire deeper.
I see what you're getting at.
Oh, here it is. Army of 100,000
Please hurry,
Chinese
Doctor.
ducks ready to fight locust swarms. What they need to do is import our Canadian geese. They clear out the
Oh, yeah.
locusts. And then what they leave behind might be worse than the locusts.
Well, then you need predators to take out the geese.
Yeah.
And then some other, then finally we'll go after the, whatever takes out the geese.
I guess China's sending these geese or these ducks into Pakistan
Talking about the locust.
to try and keep the locusts from making it into China because they're moving their way. And they're saying they can be more effective than pesticides.
Wow.
But one duck is able to eat more than 200 locusts a day.
Good grief.
So, 100,000 geese, or ducks, rather. That would be 200,000, 2 million, 100,000, 200 a day. That's going to bring us up to 2 million, 20 million. 20 million locusts a day.
Solve the problem then?
Or at least put a dent in it, maybe. They're going to try in the western region of China in the Xinjiang province, and they're working with it there. And if they have success, they're going to take them into Pakistan. But they've got these swarms of locusts, Eastern Africa, South Asia, destroying crops and pastures. This is Bloomberg describing it as the pest plague, together with unseasonable rain and a scourge of low-quality seeds, has hit major crops in Pakistan's largest producing regions. And they're into India now, They said the size of the swarms are the size of cities.
Well, they're laying their eggs too, because I look at them, people read about it. They like, they
Uh-huh.
lay their eggs and they're like, they do their damage, lay their eggs and move on.
Yeah, and
And then a year
then,
later, whatever, they just hatch.
Now they believe the Himalayas actually are going to hold back the locusts in some areas, but they come around there, and some will make it over, but they are working, but not sure if they'll be able to do it completely, but at least make a little bit of a dent. Pakistan's government is urging their citizens to eat locusts.
Okay,
Okay, it says people should take advantage of the situation and barbecue locusts or make a curry, according to local newspaper report.
What's their lifespan?
Yeah, probably mostly a year, I would think. Yeah.
They live a year?
I'm sure that they lay the eggs hatch. They're going to be in the larval stage first, and then or the nymph stage. I think they have more of a nymph stage because they don't the egg hatches, and like grasshoppers are more closely related to locusts, and they go through a nymph stage rather than so much of the larval stage. But then the eggs would be laid this year, like Steve said, and then hatch next year. And then they probably hatch out, eat, and then lay eggs and start the cycle. Let's see, lifespan of a locust. Life cycle. But yeah, even the secular media is calling it a plague, because remember we looked at that in Revelation chapter 6, where it's talking about the plagues and the pestilences. Okay. The lifestyles of the rich and hungry. That the eggs hatch in about 10 to 20 days after being laid. The nymphs make their way to the surface and emerge as hoppers, like miniature adults, but wingless at this stage. If the food supply is sufficient, the hoppers are not forced to crowd together when they emerge from the eggs, and they live their lives separately, as do other grasshoppers. But if they're crowded together for one reason or another, they enter in a gregarious phase of activity where they tend to keep together in a band and move forward and makes a swarm. And that's where they change color from the normal green or a sort of a light tan or brown color to a black and yellow or orange coloration. That's what they were talking about. Remember how they had this orangey coloration? That's because they're swarming. Let's see. The swarms range up in the size of hundreds to millions, covering as much as a few square meters to several square kilometers. As hoppers, they'll only migrate a few kilometers each day, but the swarms, I guess, begin to go further. Medium-sized swarm may contain 1,000 million locusts, covering 20 square kilometers, consuming 300 tons of vegetation a day. And if they land on agricultural crops, they consume everything edible: stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, whatever. If they can eat it, they eat it. And they will travel literally in those swarms from Africa to India, laying eggs along the way. But it hasn't
How many
given.
eggs can they lay?
Let's see, 50 to 100 eggs laid at a time.
Now, how many times can they lay them?
Well, this doesn't say that, but it looks like they can lay it more than once.
But it doesn't say anything about their lifespan.
Not here. Thought it would. Let me try another site here. Okay, this one I think has it. Desert locust. Now they're saying here that they can actually lay up to 80 eggs in a pod, and they can lay eggs at least 3 times in their lifetime, usually about 6 to 11 days apart. They live about 3 to 5 months.
Wow. That's a long time.
Takes about 30 to 40 days to go through the nymph stage before they become fully adult where they can fly. They eat their own body weight every day.
Can you imagine the mess they make when they die, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Gotta
got
stay
a
over.
smell.
Or remember the cicadas when there was piles of them,
Yeah.
you could smell it. I mean, just the piles of the shells and everything even.
These look more like grasshoppers than
Yeah.
cicadas.
Yeah, because the true locust is more like, like when the summer where you get those ones that fly out of your driveway, the big brownish ones.
Yeah.
Those are more like the true locusts. Even though we call the other ones locusts, they're really not. But yeah, it's definitely a concerning thing for people there.
If you strip a tree or any vegetation of its leaves and its new growth, and so it's gonna die.
Mm-hmm. Because it basically starves it.
So they gotta regrow trees again. Doesn't fruit trees take a long time to grow and produce? I mean,
Well,
kill them and
some trees will sprout up from the roots eventually, because they store food in the roots. That's why maybe you go through and cut, hardwood trees down like a clear cut, and if you come back a few years later, it's like a miniature forest again because the stumps all sprout up. Softwoods like pines and spruces don't tend to do that, but maples and oaks and hickories and hardwoods like that, ash trees, they'll shoot back up. Even when the chestnut blight went through here in the 30s, even for years, I can remember in the 70s, there was a stump of a chestnut tree on a fence row in one back hayfield, and every couple of years it would send up some shoots, and they actually have had some develop. They're developing a strain of American chestnut that's resistant to the chestnut blight. From some of these trees, they managed to have enough resistance that they've kept them. You're hoping that one day they'll come back.
Yeah, they've done that. The elms, they've done that with the elms too. You can buy
Mm-hmm.
disease resistant.
Because these shoots can produce leaves and then eventually seeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can plant the seed for a new tree.
Mm-hmm. But they can only do that so long before, the food supply in the roots is exhausted, and then they can't do it anymore. If they're not able to grow, they have to be able to get leaves out, start producing food, and that's what happens. The tree takes a lot of those sugars and stuff and sends them down into the roots and sort of stores them there. But
Some of the locusts suck it on that down there.
And what they do eat when they're down in the ground.
Well, see, the locusts aren't in the ground. Their eggs are laid and they crawl out of the ground, and then they feed on the green stuff above the ground. Cicadas, on the other hand, they stay underground for years and they eat roots.
Yeah, that's why I was talking about the cicadas.
Yeah, that's what they do. 'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah, like when you're digging in the yard, you'll dig them up, those grubs. You'll see those whitish grubs, and then which, other than being good for fishing, Chickens like them too, because we used to throw them in chickens, I remember, and they'd gobble them up. So, but it's, it's like we talked about, the foreshadowing of things during the tribulation. We have to see those things if we're as close as we think we could be. We have to see those things. I was going to make mention Kim is on call tonight, so and they're she's got somebody who's actively dying, so she may have to go out at some point. Not the Friday night monster.
The mush is ready. There's some sour cream up there to the left of it. There's a bit of sauerkraut in there.
Ooh, sounds good.
And it is very hot.
When we talk about foreshadowings of things in the tribulation, that guy that's going to be on the radio with me a week from today, Gary Cobb, did you look it up online yet? That he's going to be up here in Brecksville on, was it Monday night? I think it is. Not this coming Monday, but the following
After the
after the
radio.
program.
Is that Cuyahoga Republican?
No, this is used to be the Act for America, Act Cleveland chapter. They're now Red Green Axis exposed. They can do more things. They got more freedom. But yeah, 7 o'clock on Monday, week from Monday. So it'll be the
What are you
9th.
talking about? What's this discussion?
Global world government, global one world religion. See, these are areas too that can go more. The ACT group doesn't like them going in those directions as much. Not that they have anything against it, they just want to focus more on the Islamic side of things. The Islamic side of things is part of it. That's why they call it the red-green axis. Red for communism and green for Islam. And they're working together, much like during the old Cold War days, the left and the communists worked hand in hand, even though the left would have been some of the first ones in the gulags and the communists taking over this country.
Where's this located at?
It's going to be here in Brecksville, but you have to sign up online. They're very, they try to be very careful because they've had, protesters in the past. So you have to go to, I've got it here just a minute. I think it's RGA. Yeah, RGA at eaglefiremail.com. RGA Red Green Axis. RGA at eaglefiremail.com. Yeah, it's like $5 at the door, but yeah. So I had the Goldsteins on with me last Sunday night, talking about that case where Philip Haney, who was a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security, was murdered out in California. And more and more is coming out little bit by little bit. I don't have the link yet, but his fiance has a program. I guess she does podcasts, and she's got a thing out talking about it and all. And apparently he was writing a sequel to his book, and possibly might have been going back to the Department of Homeland Security. And he had just been doing an investigation of the Minnesota Attorney General, Ellison, who is the first openly Muslim member of Congress. And so he had a lot of enemies, and the FBI is supposed to be looking into it as well. And there's a number of other people who are going out, who are private investigators who are going to be looking at friends of his. But yeah, Philip Haney was a strong Christian, and so, you know, all the initial reports that people were saying that he might have committed suicide were generally immediately, you know, discredited because he had no signs or evidences of being suicidal. He was looking forward to getting married. He was looking forward to going to Israel here shortly, I think this year. Loved to go to Israel.
You don't discard your cell phone right before you commit suicide.
Well, I guess they do have cell phone and laptop. They do
Okay.
have it now. So some of those things, initial reports, not knowing where it was. And of course, in initial reports on a lot of these things, you never know. But he had started out as an entomologist studying bugs in the Middle East. That's where he learned Arabic and learned about the Islamic culture in general, and spent a lot of time in various parts of the Middle East. And then he started working as an agricultural inspector because he just knew so much about bugs. And then when Homeland Security was being formed, he came on board with that as one of the founding members. And he used to say that he applied his knowledge of studying bugs to studying terrorist groups, so that you would just follow them back to the nest. He just learned how to observe and track them and follow them back to their nest. And he was very successful enough that the Obama administration basically forced him out, and they made him eliminate his entire database that he had compiled. Probably thousands of names and things, but and yeah, so he had written a whistleblower book because he couldn't get anybody's attention, and so he was on a lot of the big shows, big talk shows, you know, Hannity, and I think Limbaugh had him on different ones, and Fox News, and various ones. So there's still more information, I'm sure, is going to be coming out about that. But it does underscore that we are in a battle, and a spiritual battle sometimes manifests itself in very real physical ways. And certainly if you've been watching the news with other stuff, you can see the spiritual battle manifest itself. The U.S. Senate could not pass legislation protecting babies born alive from a botched abortion. Baby survives the abortion, you have a living baby laying there. What do you do with it? And they wanted to pass legislation in the Senate saying that you have to treat it like a living baby because that's what it is. And a number of people, Gillibrand? I think it was Gillibrand said that was, how did she? I can't remember how she put it, but basically that it was an attack on abortion. Well, how can that be an attack on abortion? The baby is born. It's now here. Even the people who want abortion on demand can't deny it's a living baby, but they're trying to, because the next step now is infanticide, calling it euphemistically post-birth abortion. It's infanticide. That's exactly what it is, killing a living baby. And several of the Democrat senators were caught on camera high-fiving each other when they defeated that legislation.
Was it Republicans must have signed on to it? Some Republicans must have signed.
Murkowski and Collins.
Of course.
No, let me take that back. There's two of them. There were two bills. There was the babies born alive. I don't think they signed on to that one. But then there was the banning abortions when they believed that the unborn child was capable of feeling pain capable thing. That was defeated as well. And that one's the one that Murkowski and Collins signed on to. The Democrat senator of West Virginia, Manchin, he voted the right way on both of those. I say the right way because I don't remember whether it was a yes vote or a no vote that was the right way to protect the unborn children and the born children. But Manchin voted for both of them.
And there were two other Democrats.
Well, on one of them, the babies born alive, Manchin, a guy in Pennsylvania, and a guy in Alabama, I believe it was, 3 Democrats. For the fetal pain one or whatever, that one was just Manchin and the guy in Pennsylvania, but not the guy in Alabama. So, on the other hand, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the ability to deny federal funds for abortions. So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is changing. Another term for President Trump, he'll make a tremendous lasting impact on the courts. Because there's no way that, looking at the Supreme Court, there's no way that they're going to be able to keep propping up Ginsburg too much longer.
Trump even thanked Obama. He says, "Thanks for leaving all these openings for me."
Yeah, and that's part of it.
But it was like about 190 now that he put in off.
Yeah, he's coming close to 200.
Perhaps the only good thing that Obama did.
Well,
He didn't do.
yeah. Well, part of it though goes back to the Bush years because they prevented George W. from filling a lot of these. When the Senate was, I think it was the Senate was controlled by the Democrats during the last part, they prevented him from filling these. So there was a backlog, open seats. And then Obama came in, he just didn't see the point in doing it. He just was lazy or whatever, but he didn't do it. And so he left all these hundreds of seats open. And now President Trump's been filling them left and right.
Yeah.
And are all of them going to be good? Probably not. But all of them are going to most likely be better than what Hillary would have put in. Much
Big
better.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, getting back to the vote on the abortions and all,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that for like 2 states? Or we're not talking national on those votes, were we?
The one I was talking about was federal. It was the U.S. Senate. Had a bill. Let me find it here.
I'm sure the best justice or judge that Obama would ever, or the best that Hillary would have appointed would have been far worse than the worst that Trump will ever appoint.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this was the thing about Gillibrand. It wasn't that it was restricting abortions. I will give you the quote here. The Senate voted 56-41 in favor of the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. You would think, well, why didn't it pass? But for some reason, they have to have 60 votes to pass it, not just a simple majority. They needed 60. They were 4 votes short. But here's the thing, and it was 53-44 in favor of the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which would ban most abortions starting at 20 weeks. But Gillibrand said this is part of President Trump and Mitch McConnell's all-out assault on women. They're trying to harm women. They're taking away or trying to take away their civil rights, their human rights, their ability to make the most important, intimate decisions of their lives. They're taking away their religious freedom. They're taking away their moral freedom. So it's a threat to religious freedom if you...
How about the woman who was just born?
Yeah, or
Now they're
not born yet. Yeah, the unborn women or the just born women. But religious freedom. It's taking away
They're
religious
calling
freedom.
abortion their religion.
Yeah, that's what it is. They're sacrificing these children on the altars of their own self-interest.
It's a pretty sick world.
Yeah.
It seemed like it got sick, really sick in my lifetime. It started off good, but it's going down in flames.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you don't have more abortions, you have less spare parts to sell.
Follow the money. She went on to say these two measures that we're voting on literally change the landscape of how we treat a baby who is born, who cannot survive outside the womb, and how those parents want to be able to have those final moments with their child. That's where the protecting children that are born. It's a horrible, horrible choice by Mitch McConnell to force these votes. And we voted on these measures before and they've lost. I think this is just a political ploy to satisfy those who are attending the CPAC conference. So here's the thing. What newborn baby can survive outside the womb on its own? Exactly. So what she's saying there is if a baby can't survive outside the womb on its own, then the parents should be able to just eliminate it. Okay, what 1-year-old can survive on its own without a...
Well, let's drop those Democrats in the desert for a week on their own. And if they don't survive, then they should have been killed.
Mm-hmm.
It shows them up for what they are,
Mm-hmm.
that vote, forcing that vote, which is what he wanted to do.
And you see where Senator Warren kind of put her foot in it when during the Democrat debate, she was trying to make points against Bloomberg because he had signed those.
About killing the kids.
Yeah, he signed those non-disclosure and said, just kill it, about this lady. And she'd have an abortion. He's accused of saying, just kill it. So she brings that up. She says when she was 20, her first teaching job, teaching these special education students, loved her job. The end of the year, though, she was visibly pregnant with her first child. And the principal said, did a great job, but you can't come back. And so she suffered pregnancy discrimination, all of which is untrue. Of course, she's American Indian too, but she's got at least 250,000th or something like that. It makes her American Indian. Yeah, Ken, you just don't measure up, sorry. We only got a few thousand times more than her.
One of her distant ancestors actually talked to an Indian once. So.
Or walked by a drugstore, remember when they had a Wooden Indian cigar store, the Wooden Indian out there. But, or maybe watched the Cowboys and Indians movie on TV or something. But so she's saying that, but at least he didn't tell me just kill it, which then, of course, the liberal media didn't want to make much of that. But what she just said there is she's saying this is a living child. And isn't it a horrible thing to say just kill it? But they all kind of overlook that one because she's supposed to be a champion of abortion rights. You're not really just killing it. You're just getting rid of non-viable products of conception.
So she supposedly had this kid?
Yeah, it was her first child. But she's making out like she was fired because she was pregnant. And they're not at all true. It had as much truth as when Biden got the leader of China who'd been dead for umpteen years to sign on to the Paris Peace Accords.
Yeah, corn pop or something.
Yeah, or when he got arrested going to see Nelson Mandela in jail. That's nonsense. I have a picture I put online that I found a picture from when I was in the Air Force when I met. I
Maybe they believe their own lies.
yeah,
That's a bad habit of liars.
but I had this picture I put on here, and oops, let me get it to come up here. There it is. And basically in the picture, you can't see it from there, but I got my picture with Gorbachev there. And I wrote on there, I said, in light of Joe Biden's claims about getting arrested trying to visit Nelson Mandela and negotiating the Paris Climate Accord with Deng Xiaoping, I decided to reveal my influence on the fall of the Soviet Union. In 1986, I met the Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev at Madame Tussauds in London. I was a young Air Force sergeant at the time, and I felt it my duty to try to talk him into enhancing the freedom of speech, that's glasnost, and press and decentralizing economic decision-making, which is perestroika, in the Soviet Union in hopes of bringing about its eventual demise. It worked out better than I hoped with the final collapse of the Soviet Union in December 1991. And so I got this picture that I had, me and Gorbachev right there. In fact, I used to have it on my desk. You know, I'm in a skiff, you know, it's top secret information I can leave on my desk, you know, and go to lunch if I wanted to. Not a good practice, but I literally could. But I had his picture with me right there on the desk with me, because we had these plastic desks underneath there. And I wrote on there, Comrade Davis, thanks for the advice regarding glasnost and perestroika. I will bring it up with the Central Committee when I get back to Moscow. And then it's got Gorbachev's signature right there. I mean, there it is. Hey, if Biden can do it, why can't I? No.
Were you able to get a handshake out of that?
No, he didn't move much. He just kind of stood there. I mean, he's right there. But see, the key is I met him at Madame Tussauds.
Yeah, I picked up on that.
They allow you to touch them or not?
Yeah, I got my hand on his back like this, like I'm talking to him. And a friend of mine took the picture. They had, Madame Tussauds kind of neat because some of the wax figures are made to look, in fact, in the background, you can see what looks like a woman and she's leaning on a bench. She's sitting on a bench. And I've been to Madame Tussauds several times. And so I know to watch, because what happens is it's a wax figure of a woman that looks like she's been touring the sites all day and she's just wasted. And you can see her in the bottom right-hand corner. She's like she's falling asleep, and you can see her going like this. And people watch her and they go, is she real? Is she real? And eventually somebody will go up and touch her, you know. But it's a wax figure, and there's a couple of them scattered around like that in there. But
it's somehow motorized.
Yeah, so it looks like she's breathing, and even with the sound of the breath, and so it's pretty good. It's really kind of nice. But so I had, you know, there's Gorbachev there, and I thought, you know, what better thing to do? You know, I got a high security clearance. I work in a skiff. I'm going to just take this picture, get it. I'm going to stick it in there on my desk, see if anybody says it.
But the difference is, you know, you're doing it just in fun.
Uh-huh.
Biden, his confusion is real.
Yeah, at least we think it's real. Maybe I don't even know if he knows whether it's real or not. But obviously, I added the note and the signature. I had some fun with this the other day, and I found his signature online. I thought, wow, I wonder if I could put on this picture, because I had just found this picture recently and scanned it in. I thought, if I can get his signature on there, I got to have a note. And I was thinking in light of Biden's claims, I thought, I ought to be able to do this. So obviously it's in red ink. So
He just came out and apologized for one of his gaffes. But I kept trying to sit here and trying to think of which one it was.
Which one?
yeah.
That's like the elephant dancing. You don't critique how well it dances. It's amazing it dances at all.
Yeah.
So who cares which one? The fact that he apologized for anything.
True. I think what's really alarming is their ability to lie and obfuscate all the things they do when they're on the Senate or House of Representatives floor, for which they cannot be held liable. Yeah, you can't sue them. You can say anything you want. You can't sue them. You can't do anything.
Right. And now they're trying to say that President Trump's dropped the ball on the coronavirus, and that it's like we're about to be overwhelmed with coronavirus deaths. Has there been any deaths in the United States from coronavirus?
Well, we gotta have something to
Not
cry about.
cases,
Unless you count Amy.
That wasn't coronavirus. It was coronavirus.
More flu deaths.
Yeah, well, there's already been, what, 14 or 16 flu deaths in Cuyahoga County. this flu season.
Nobody's saying a word, you know. Amazing.
We can get him for using his wife's toothbrush to brush his teeth with.
Mm-hmm. But China's still suffering the effects. I haven't seen the latest figures, but
Well, they had, what's his name on there from,
Tim
what's his
Cook
name? Tim, yeah.
from Apple.
Yeah, he got on and he was saying that a lot of their employees are back to work. I know they opened up, most of the Starbucks are back open again. They had 4,000 wow, that's important. 4,000 Starbucks in China.
Hmm.
And most of them are back open again. So people are starting to come back to work. I don't know if that's under penalty of death or what, but
or could suggest that it's run its course. You know, the worst of it is it's peaked and now it's passing.
Well, and see, that's the big thing to watch. That's what's the really concerning thing that people need to watch is to see whether or not this is gonna cycle.
Yes.
If it cycles, that's a wonderful thing. You know, if it's coming up to a peak and we have a peak and then it starts to cycle down, that's a wonderful thing. If it just keeps going up and up and up, that's when it's more problematic.
The people all going back to work into Starbucks thinking it's okay, you could get more infections and
Well, and see, here's the thing. If people going back to work, if they're being forced to, and you see a resurgence, you know, if you see, you know,
More
and,
cases.
and let's say in a week or 10 days, you see a bunch more cases, then it really does not run its course. It was just environmental factors kind of push them back to work. So,
false recovery, so to speak.
yeah. But yeah, it's really something to watch is to see whether or not we can actually see it start to crust and come down. And also as it's being, you know, treated in other places, we're getting better numbers in terms of fatality rates and, you know, things like that.
Italy currently is having a spike. And then they found that one woman in California that has it. They don't know how she got it.
That's the concern.
Yeah, that's the one they're concerned. The latest thing that I have here updated today is worldwide 84,611 cases, 2,923 deaths. China currently 79,252 cases and 2,835 deaths, followed by South Korea with 2,337 cases and 16 deaths. Italy is next with 889 cases and 21 deaths. And that Diamond Princess cruise ship had 705 cases and 6 deaths. Iran is now the next country in line, 388 cases, 34 deaths. And the health minister in Iran has said that he has it. And then Japan is the next one, 234 cases, 5 deaths. Singapore, 98 cases, Hong Kong, 93 with 2 deaths. United States, 63 cases, no deaths. The next country with deaths is France, 57 cases, 2 deaths. And then Taiwan with 34 cases and 1 death. And then the Philippines, 3 cases and 1 death.
I'm thinking the flu might be just as bad.
Flu is worse.
Right
I
now,
remember
there's
back in
a
the
lot
seven-
more cases of the flu.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's a numbers game.
Mhm.
Because right now, the flu is not as deadly, but you got thousands and thousands and thousands of more cases of the flu.
Right.
doesn't the flu attack more of the young and in this,
It depends on the strain.
okay. This corona thing is only attacking the older people, not the children so much.
So it depends on the strain. Because like the strain of the flu that's going around this year is hitting kids harder in addition to older people. So
Yeah.
it just kind of depends on which strain
all those little kids go to school, they come home, and then mommy and daddy gets it, you know? It's
Mhm.
like, I remember them days.
I was looking for something that had the death rate for the flu.
Past week I was working all night. And there was a guest security guard working all night too. And we got in a little discussion. He was from the Middle East. A Christian said, and I was talking about listening to radio to help pass time, you know, not for me because I'm busy, but he was sitting there trying to stay awake. Oh, those guys like Prager and that, they're all bought and sold Republicans, you know. He talked about how Palestinians got as much right to be in Palestine as Jews. They've been there as long as the Jews. I don't think so.
No, not those.
She's always feels safe around. Personally, her interactions with the Jews have been peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And talked to her about, he never heard of Bridget Gabriel, who got treated better by the Israelis than she did by Syrians when she needed medical help for her mom. And, I didn't know how to counter his claims that I thought the Palestinians were just an invention of the Romans. Oh, we're going to call it Palestine just to
That's what they
stick it
did,
in
yeah.
the Jews. Stick it
It's,
in the
Oh,
Jews' eyes.
you should give him one of your booklets.
Yeah.
He has a booklet.
Might
Will
have
the
some in
real
the one box.
Palestinians please stand up?
But the word that Palestinian and Palestine comes from is actually in the Bible. Yes, the Philistines. Let me find it here. Yeah, if you go to Joel chapter 3.
Where was Philistia?
Well, that's what we'll look at
Oh, okay.
here. Yeah, Joel chapter 3, we'll go there first.
I thought Philistia, they were seagoing, weren't they? They were on the coast.
Yeah.
The Mediterranean.
Yeah, Joel chapter 3. And it says in Joel chapter 3, in verse number 4, yea, and what have we to do, or what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own heads? And he continues on that sentence. But Tyre and Zidon, that's up in Lebanon and up in that area, okay, to the north. Coast of Palestine, well, if you look at that, like you said, it's on the coast. Let me, oops, I just lost what I had here, just a minute here. Let me go over to that. I mean, there's another verse that we need to get to, and that is, as I can find it. It's not finding it right away. I'm trying to find the other one here. All right. We're going to go back to Exodus chapter 15, and we have in Exodus chapter 15 verse 14, it says, the people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Palestina, okay, which is Palestine, okay. Now, that exact same word, the next time that it occurs, that's the first time that it occurs. The Greek word there is, what is it? It's Pelesheth. And this is, next time you find that word, you find it in Psalm 60 in verse 8, where it says, Moab is my washpot. Over Edom will I cast out my shoe. Philistia, triumph thou because of me. And see, this is where we get the clue. Palestina in Exodus 15, verse 14, is translated as Philistia in Psalm 60 in verse 8. And then Psalm 83 in verse 7, Gebel and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines, with the inhabitants of Tyre. Well, Philistines there, again, it's that same word, Philistia. It was translated Palestine. And it appears several more times in, let me just jump through here, in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 29, it says, rejoice not thou whole Palestina, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken. Yeah, for out of the serpent's root shall come forth the cockatrice, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. And then again in Isaiah 14, verse 31, howl, O gate, cry, O city, thou whole Palestina art dissolved, for there shall come from the north the smoke, and none shall be alone in his appointed times. And then we come to the one that was at in Joel. And so you can see that Palestine, you have to go out.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay, so what's that time frame? I'm ready.
Yeah.
Well, have a safe trip.
Probably.
Okay. Have you heard anything more about how she's doing?
No.
So we have,
Hi, everybody.
Good night, Kim.
she's on call this evening, so.
Yeah, I'm on call Sunday, so I probably won't see you guys on Sunday morning.
Okay.
So what we have here, Palestina and Philistia, like I said, being that word Pelesheth, this is the word for the Philistines, in the coast thereof. So where was the Philistines? On the coast deck, right where the Gaza Strip is today. So the Gaza Strip is properly what Palestine would be. But Palestine is a variant on Philistine. Palestine, Philistine, they're the same identical thing. And that's what happened when the Romans booted out the Jews from Canaan, the land of Canaan, or Judea, because it was the land of Canaan before they went in. Remember, the Canaanites, not the Palestinians. It was the Canaanites. The Palestinians were a seafaring people. In fact, you find them in Genesis chapter 10. They're not even descendants of Shem like the Arabs are. In Genesis chapter 10, we see the descendants of Ham, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the descendants of Ham in Genesis chapter 10, we come down to verse 14, and it says, and Pathrusim and Casluim, out of whom came Philistim and Caphtorim. Well, Philistim's the Philistines, and they were a seafaring people. And it's actually believed that they migrated down to the northern part of the Delta Peninsula, the Nile Delta Peninsula, and then they were pushed out by the Egyptians, and they wandered up the coast, landed in the area of where the Gaza Strip is today, Philistia. And of course, the cities Ekron and things like that. Remember, with the when they battled the Philistines periodically, and the Philistines captured the ark that time. and it was in several of the Philistine cities. Those are all in the area of the Gaza Strip today. The rest of the land was, like I said, it was the Canaanites that lived there, and then it became the land that was given to the Jewish people by God himself, who was the owner of the land anyways, because it's God's land. So when a Palestinian so-called Christian says that it's, or a Palestinian Muslim says the land belongs to the Palestinians, or that they have just as much right to it, no, they don't. Because the Palestinians that are calling themselves Palestinians, they're not Philistines.
Right.
They're Arab. The Philistines are descendants of Ham, and the Philistines were largely wiped out. But the Romans, they chased the Jews out in the 2nd century, and when they did that, they renamed the land Philistia, which comes down to us as Palestine. That's where the name comes from. So down through the centuries, from the 2nd century on, the Jews never fully left the land. So the Jews have continually been in the land since the days of the book of Exodus. They left Egypt. We were talking about that earlier. They had been in the land 400 years previously. They moved down into Egypt for a time. So other than the gap when they were down in Egypt, if you ignore that 400-year gap from the time that Abraham moved into the land of Canaan and had his son Isaac, and then Isaac had his son Jacob. Now, Jacob is the father of the Jewish people. Isaac's uncle, Abraham's first son, Ishmael, is the father of the Arab people. So, and also Esau, the Edomites, which were absorbed into the Arab peoples as well. That was the fraternal twin of Jacob, but he was born technically first. But the son of blessing was not Ishmael, it was Isaac. And then of Isaac's son Jacob and Esau, it wasn't Esau, it was Jacob that was the son of blessing. And that's where the blessing went. You can follow that through the Bible. But as a consequence, there's been virtually a continuous presence of the Jewish people in the land, except for a brief time down in Egypt. And so when the Romans renamed it Palestinia or Philistia, that was the first time the overall land had that name applied to it. And then everybody that lived there was called Palestinians. Didn't matter whether you were Jewish or Christian or Muslim. It didn't matter whether you were Arab or Persian or Egyptian or Chinese. If you lived there, just like if you live here, you're an American. If you live on the other side of Lake Erie, you're a Canadian. If you live on the other side of the Rio Grande, you're a Mexican. Yes.
What about the 12 princes he promised Ishmael?
He would make a great nation to him, and that's why there is a lot of, and they largely moved because Job in the Bible, one of the richest men of the East, he lived down in an area of Jordan and Saudi Arabia, a lot of that area there, and he was a descendant of Ishmael. He was also a descendant of Edom.
But if your only proof for all of this succession of land names and land ownership and so on is the Bible, then you're written off immediately.
Yeah, except that cultural proof, or I'm not sorry, archaeological proof exists. Evidence, and this is why the Muslims try to destroy Jewish archaeological evidence, because they're trying to prove that the Jews weren't there, that the Jews stole the land from them. But we've got tons of the archaeological evidence going all the way back. They've actually identified Abraham and Sarah's grave sites. They've identified where I think Rebecca was buried and all. But they've got things going all the way back to the early days of the Jewish presence in the land. And then culturally, or not culturally, historically, you've got you've got references in Egyptian histories, you've got references in Assyrian histories, Persian histories, Mede histories. You got all kinds of references, the Jewish people being there thousands of years ago, going all the way back to the time of the Exodus. Then we were talking about the movie about talking about where they crossed the Red Sea. That one site where I believe they crossed, when you arrive on the shore in Saudi Arabia, you've got those little menorahs that are, carved into the rock, Jewish menorahs, which suggests that there was a claim on some of that area. But anyway, there's just there's so much evidence. And so to say that there's no evidence other than what the Bible says, it shows that somebody doesn't know what reality is. They're just covering their eyes saying, don't show me the facts. Because there's plenty of archaeological evidence that the Jews were there. And many of the people who call themselves Palestinians today, actually, their more recent ancestors were brought in during the time of the Ottoman Empire to work the land. They were brought into the area. And so they may claim that their ancestors go back a dozen, or a few generations, but they can't claim that they go back millennia, because they don't. Abraham sent Ishmael, and then later when he was married his third wife, Keturah, and their children, he sent them away out of the land to the east. Some of the descendants of Keturah probably would have made up some of the Arab people as well, and probably went as far as where the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait and places like that are, Dubai. And also the descendants of Ishmael, they traveled further south in the Arabian Peninsula in different locations. And then, of course, Edom, Esau, he left out of the land too. He went down into the Sinai Peninsula. That was Edom, and the Edomites. So the descendants of Abraham and the descendants of Isaac, other than the Jewish people, basically left the land, leaving the Jews there in the land, the descendant Jacob and his descendants.
Well, if there was a famine, everybody was gone for 400 years.
Yeah, a number of people left the land.
Well, who was left?
Well, there were bound to have been some people who scraped by, but the point of the matter is they only left temporarily, even though it ended up being about 400 years. But they came back into the land, and well, obviously somebody was left. I know who was left. Canaanites. Some of them had their populations had begun to grow, because when Jacob and his sons left the land and sojourned in Egypt, they weren't a huge nation at that time. They were living in the midst of the Canaanites. And when they came back into the land, the Canaanites, because of their child sacrifice, their idol worship, and a variety of other immoral and perverse things, God had passed judgment on them. The Bible doesn't record all of the opportunities that he gave them and told them and to try to give them a chance, but he passed judgment on them. And he used the Jewish people when they came into the land. As you read the book of Joshua, he used them as a tool of judgment to destroy people that he had passed judgment on. And just like he used, like I said, he used Nebuchadnezzar as a tool of judgment against the Jewish people and against Jerusalem for rejecting him. So he used the Israelites as a tool of judgment. They didn't have orders to go and destroy everybody that wasn't like them. They were focused only on the land. And so in the midst of that, some people like Rahab the harlot and others, embraced God and God had mercy on them. But by and large, they displaced the residents of the land. They didn't get rid of all of them, because in many cases they disobeyed God. And so these people continued living in the land But again, the Canaanites themselves were not Arabs. I'm trying to think where the Canaanites came from.
Canaan was a grandson of Ham,
Yeah,
or son of Ham.
yeah, I'm
He
trying
was
to, yeah,
cursed
here
by,
he is, yeah.
Noah.
In Genesis 10, verse 6, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan. So the Canaanites, again, are not an Arabic people. The Canaanites are not Arabic. The Philistines are not Arabic, or the Palestinians. None of them are Arab, are Semitic. I mean, the Arab peoples are Semitic people. They're descendants of Shem. And so, as a consequence, the only descendants of Shem that inhabited the land were the Jews, basically, that had claim on the land. And plus, much of the land was purchased as well. Abraham purchased sections of the land. Isaac purchased portions of the land. Jacob purchased, I think, portions of land, and then God gave the rest of the land to them. And so when they marched through the land and they took control of what God gave to them, then of course, like I said, after the Romans displaced them, there were always some Jews living there. A remnant of the Jews stayed there in the land, so they never were gone from the land completely. So there's like an unbroken history of Jewish presence there, going all the way back to the book of Exodus. And so thousands of years. But what happened was eventually the Ottoman Empire came in. Did I have to go? Oh, okay. Well, that was a short trip.
Well, that was the end of it.
Okay. Well, better than halfway down the road before you found out. So the Ottoman Empire, they, followed on the heels of Muhammad's conquest of the whole area. And he was on a mission basically to destroy the Jewish people because they wouldn't accept his religion. And the Ottoman Empire then, of course, rose to power, controlled the area. And so they started taxing the people that lived there. Olive trees, you had to pay a horrendous tax for each olive tree that you had. So people started cutting down all the olive trees so they didn't have to pay taxes and things like that. And then they demanded more and more, and they farmed so much that they played the soil out. Remember, the Jews were told farm for 7 years and then let it lay fallow. Or the seventh year, let it lay fallow the seventh year. And that allowed the soil to rejuvenate because those plants that are growing, they're pulling nutrients up from the subsoil into their leaves and stems, which then fall down, you turn it under, and it puts nutrients back in the topsoil again. But the people who were living there under the Ottoman Empire control, they just farmed the ground until it played out. They couldn't get anything more out of it. And they brought in a number of Arabic people, Muslim people. They even brought in people from places as far away as Albania, Muslims, into the land. And so a lot of the people that were there hadn't been there more than a couple generations at the most. And they're claiming that they were displaced from the land that the Jews lived on for thousands of years. Yeah, Jimmy Carter wrote a book called Apartheid, and about how evil the Israelis were and everything, stealing the land from the Arabs. But it was the Arabs that stole the land from the Jews and then got upset when they started buying it back. And they did buy a lot of it back. They used to, when the Zionist movement was developing in the early 20th century, they actually would have like cans on the counter at Jewish stores and businesses, and people would put money in there to use that to buy land in Palestine. And they bought the land from the Ottomans who owned it at outrageous prices. And so they purchased a lot of that land, actually with cash.
So Jews have paid for it multiple times.
Yeah, and then they purchased it with their blood as well. And
This is in the 1800s they were buying the land?
going into the 1900s, because you had the Balfour Declaration there at the end of World War II, because the Ottoman Empire dissolved. They were one of the Axis powers, or World War I, perhaps, sorry. they were one of the Axis powers, and they were on the losing side, and they lost their empire. They kind of dissolved. And at that time, it became known as British Palestine because the British were awarded control of it. The Balfour Declaration was actually an international agreement. It wasn't that the Jews lobbied somebody in England and they said, hey, this would be a great idea, let's give them this land. The world came together and said, we're going to set aside a homeland for the Jewish people, and we're going to set it aside right where their homeland is. This is the Jewish homeland. And so.
No, that didn't happen for 30 years.
No, because what happened was the Jews started raising money so they could purchase land, and they started coming back in. They were trickling in. But in the 1920s, the British foreign service basically favored the Arab interests much, much more than the Jewish interests. And bowing to pressure, see, they created after World War I these various borders, for different groups to go to. And they set an area that was going to be the Jewish homeland. And that included all of modern day Israel, as well as all of the nation of Jordan. So the Arab interest said, no, that's too much for the Jewish people. We can't have a Jewish state there that's that big. And they were fighting in attacks and everything like that. So Land for Peace deal was they took off about 3/4 of the Jewish homeland and made the country of Transjordan because it was all on the east side of the Jordan River. And
That's quite a chunk of land they took.
yeah, about 3/4 of the homeland that was set aside for the Jews. Now they'd already set aside other lands, Syria and Egypt and things like that, and constructed what became Iraq and things like that. So now they've got a new Arab state called Jordan. There was no Jordanian people. The Jordanian people were just Arabs. And so the first king had no precedent because there was no Jordanian people. Now
Who
they call
declared him a king? How did he become a king?
well, it's the type of ruler that they set up, a king. Because they had kings and things like that. They just liked kings.
He's in the right place at the
Right
right
time,
time.
yeah, he had the right connections.
Or had the right number of guns?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you've got a quarter of the land set aside as Palestine, still called Palestine, British Palestine. And the Arabs are saying, this is too much land for the Jews, too much land for the Jews. And going into World War II, you had a problem in World War II where the British and unfortunately the American, much of our intelligence services and military branches did not want to work with the Jews. They wanted to work with the Arabs. Part of the problem was they wanted to have favor with the Arabs so that we could get the oil, and make deals with them for oil. And so, quite frankly, there was some anti-Semitism. I just read this book on the Office of Strategic Services and how they used a number of missionaries and clergymen and stuff like that, and rabbis and things during World War II for gathering information and intelligence. And there were some that wanted to work with this group that was called the Jewish Agency, which kind of became a forerunner, set the basis for the Jewish government and the Jewish the Israeli Defense Forces and Mossad and all that, kind of all had their roots in that. And they wanted to work with us, but we had people who were somewhat anti-Semitic who didn't want to work with them. And probably could have had some greater and faster successes had we worked with them. But that's the way it went. So by the end of World War II, the British were becoming frustrated because nothing was going right there. And the UN had now been created. And they said, well, the UN should take care of this mess in Palestine. And the UN was going to divide the land once more, land for peace. And they were going to split up Palestine into several pieces. Some disjointed pieces, the Gaza Strip area, part of what am I trying to say, where Bethlehem and all that is, the territories there. And the other areas and parts of Jerusalem was going to be Arab homeland yet again, and some disjointed pieces of Jewish land for a Jewish state. And the Jewish people who were there realized that this is completely indefensible. There's no way we can survive. We cannot defend these borders. And so they came together, and the Zionist movement, which was actively hindered by some people in our government, including some Jewish leaders. In fact, in that book that I was reading, they suggested that one of the Jewish guys that was working with the OSS, he was instrumental in helping develop the Reformed Jewish groups so that they would oppose a Jewish homeland in the Middle East. And the Arabs were saying, well, if there's going to be a Jewish homeland, why not put it in Germany? Since you defeated Germany, put them there, and this, that, and the other, anywhere but their homeland.
Put them on Mars.
They would have if they could have, I guess. So the Jews got together there, that group that was, evolved out of the Jewish Agency, and they basically said, if we keep this up, there's not going to be anything left for us, or us. And so they came together, declared themselves a state. And before that had happened, of course, President Roosevelt had assured the Arab interests, there will never be a Jewish state under my, as long as I'm alive.
It'll not over my dead
And
body.
over my dead body. Then he died.
Then
Sudden
Truman
death. Yeah, Truman come along. Truman was a Baptist. He had been told that God had a special plan for the Jewish people, including a Jewish state. He was advised by the State Department. He was advised by people in the military, people in the intelligence services, all said, do not recognize a sovereign Jewish state. And against all of his advisors, he recognized the state of Israel. And so then the Arab countries around Israel promptly attacked them, and Jordan captured the area around Bethlehem and Galilee, places that had no historic Jewish connection, right? Galilee, Bethlehem, Capernaum, Can't think of anything in the Bible that had anything with the Jews in those areas. And so Jordan dropped its name Transjordan because they're now on both sides of the Jordan River, and they took huge chunks of Israel away. And then I believe that's when the Gaza Strip was taken as well. And so now Israel shrunk down again, because land for peace always succeeds, doesn't it? It always succeeds in making the matter worse. So
Who was it that took the land though? Who was it that was taking the land?
the Arab nations around
that's what I was thinking,
Israel attacked,
Yeah.
And then over a series of wars, finally in 1967, wasn't it?
67,
They took back Jerusalem, and they took back the Temple Mount. They took back Galilee and Bethlehem and all those areas, and now they're called disputed territories.
Isn't that where they surprised them, and it was the Jews that moved first in the battle to take over the.
Yeah, in fact, they were driving the Israeli Defense Forces on their tanks, or going into the Jordanian villages, being welcomed as heroes, because the people thought they were their own troops as they were passing through. It's just like God hid their eyes and had them see what he wanted them to see. And there's a number of things that took place like that, and a number of things that took place. The Egyptian officers had all been at a big party, and their radio codes were changed, and they didn't know that, and they couldn't get their air forces off the ground, and they
Just
wiped
a
them out.
coincidence.
Just all kinds of
It's
things.
just a
Yeah,
coincidence.
yeah. So
One of the, like those coincidences that
Yeah.
happen to God's people.
Oh, yes.
and so they held the area there, and like I said, they marched onto Temple Mount, and then as a sort of as a way to establish peace with the Jordanians, they said, we will not do anything on the Temple Mount, and we will let Jordan control the Temple Mount. And so that's where you had the Jordanian security of the Temple Mount. And they would be up there, and they won't let anybody pray. If we were to go to the Temple Mount today and you were to nod your head, look like you were going to pray, there's people up there who will come up and start harassing you to keep you from praying. They don't want any prayer other than Muslim prayer on the Temple Mount. So, you know, Land for Peace has never accomplished anything. They gave away the Gaza Strip, let Hamas control it, and yeah, look how much peace they've had from that. Nothing but rocket attacks out of the Gaza Strip. And then they allowed the Palestinian Authority to claim control parts of Galilee and Bethlehem and all that. And well,
Aren't they getting ready to vote over there, like prime minister and,
for Israel, yeah. And there's some concern because they've not been able to get a clear vote to make a government. Because see, they have a parliamentary system, so they have to have a prime minister. So they have to have a majority party or an alliance of parties to form a majority, and they've not been able to do it because once they form a majority, then they will have their leader be the prime minister. And he basically runs the country. They do have a president, but he's not as much in charge of things. He's got some duties, but much more limited than the prime minister.
I think they have so many days to form their coalition.
After the election or
After
something.
the election, and if they don't, then that forces another election.
Yeah, and I think the election is scheduled for like Monday, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they're concerned with coronavirus that some people might stay home because the fear is the more liberal party might suggest, so to speak, that it's rumored that there's somebody carrying coronavirus that's over in this strong right-leaning area where the Likud party is strongest, and it might keep people from going to the polls and voting, or vice versa. That the Likud party might say there's somebody over there. So,
Did you catch any of that interview with what's his name? Mark Levin did with
yeah, the prime minister.
the Prime
actually.
Minister. I can't think of his name. Shame. I mean,
Netanyahu.
Netanyahu. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were saying
no, I did not.
Everybody's
is
at
a-
peace with them, everybody's at peace with Israel, and
Yeah.
not worried about stuff.
But his opponent, the one who's giving him a hard time from getting this coalition together and so on, was the owner of a company,
Mm-hmm.
and the company is being brought under suit for illegal actions of some sort, but they're not holding the owner of the company in for any liability here whatsoever, which is
Yeah,
totally.
it is. Barney
Where did that
Gatz or
come
something,
from?
or
You know,
Bernie
how can the
Gatz.
company be guilty without the owner being guilty? So, and he's the one who's given Netanyahu the run for his money over there. So
Mhm.
finally coming around to where they are holding him liable as well as his company, and that may be his shoe in back into his prime ministership.
I was hoping to see that Mark Levin interview, but
It was very good. He'll be on again Saturday night, Friday night or Saturday night.
You might have it on his website too.
yeah, I couldn't find, well, on his website, which I didn't subscribe to, but I couldn't find it just on YouTube. Lots of times you.
Oh, I get it on Fox News shows it. If you have cable news, Fox shows it.
And I don't have it, because I've never owned, but
I got it just for Fox News.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what takes place there. And I haven't heard anything about those locusts in Israel. If it's been affecting them much. It would be interesting if they're kind of going around Israel. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
Of course, you know what would be said then. That the Jews genetically engineered them.
Yeah. Along with Trump.
And
Along
Trump
with
had
Trump.
something to do with it too.
Yeah.
You
Um,
just can't trust the rich Jews.
On Levin's website, they have one of their featured articles is that interview, I think. Benjamin Netanyahu calls Benny Gantz public support of Trump's Mideast peace plan one big con job. And it's got him sitting there with Netanyahu during the interview. It says he sits down with him for an exclusive interview to discuss foreign policy, the Israeli election, and relations between Israel and the U.S. So that appears that's on his website right now.
They say their left over there is as bad as our left. It's brutal.
So, but it's amazing sometimes that anything gets done there just like it is here.
Yeah, they got their headaches big time over there right now.
Well, and it's just like some of the early prime ministers and stuff were actually out and out socialists. Like Golda Meir was a socialist.
I don't get it. But
And
you're right.
they experimented with communism in the beginning days. It didn't work out so well.
Well, they still got their kibbutzes.
Yeah, and
things
that's
over there,
basically
you know,
a communistic setup.
Commune.
You live all things together. Everybody shares the work, and everybody shares the food. And you know, it's
I think that's one of the most expensive places to go to. When you get there, I understand. Very expensive just to go to a restaurant over there. Anybody been over there?
mhm.
I haven't either, but I'd like to see.
Mhm. I almost went there in the 1980s when I was in the Air Force. I was in England. And a friend of mine and I were going to go down there, but it was too much terrorist activity going on. And because of where we were at, we got to see what was going on. So we canceled our plans because it just didn't feel comfortable. You remember that time where they killed that Navy guy and threw him out the airplane? I think it was on the tarmac in Libya. They hijacked the jet. They landed there, and they basically dumped him out shot him and dumped him out the door. Yeah. And then, we
And they had
got
a
to
problem
see.
with the Olympics back in what?
Oh, in the 70s, yeah.
70s, yeah.
And then they had that the cruise ship, the Achille Laurel. We were watching that take place pretty much in real time. They found one Jewish American guy on there, Leon Klinghoffer, in a wheelchair. They shot him and dumped him in his wheelchair off the side of the ship.
They shot down a plane too. The Israeli military shot down an American plane.
There was one, yeah, and it's some of those things are kind of touchy because there was that one Navy ship that was out there too, and part of it, the Navy ship in particular, was one where they were given warning, because unfortunately not everybody in our government is pro-Israel, and stuff that was being collected on that ship was being given to the Arab countries. I can't think of the name of that Navy ship. No, this is a surveillance ship. Was it I can't think what it was now. But they were out there, and the Israelis basically said, "You got to stop sending this information. It's getting to our enemies. It's causing our people to be killed," and they wouldn't back off. And they said, if you don't, and so they looked at it as self-defense. They didn't look at it as they were attacking America because they were wanting to attack America. They looked at it, we wouldn't stop providing this information, and that was the only way they could save themselves, was they had to do it. And so that is a mixed sort of situation on that one. I don't remember the airplane one as much, exactly the details on that, but that one with the ship was a sad one because it could have been prevented. But not everybody in the US government, shall we say, is always pro-Israel. Yeah. But yeah, there was quite a few things that were going on in the Mediterranean and in Europe, Middle East in the 80s that probably never made the news over here. Because when Kim and I were married and the Berlin Wall came down and then the Soviet Union dissolved and all that, I told Kim when the Berlin Wall was being torn down, I said the next thing we're going to have to face is Islamic fundamentalism, because it was kind of kept in check by the Cold War. We used them against the Soviets used them against us, and we kind of kept them on a leash somewhat. But with the ending of the Cold War, it's like each side had a mean dog, and they took them off the leash and said, I don't care what they do anymore. And well, off the leash, Bin Laden became what we all know about him. The Taliban became, well, not Bin Laden, but the Taliban became what we know, because the Taliban, we had to fund people to oppose the Soviets in Afghanistan, because they had a 10-year war in Afghanistan, sort of like their Vietnam. And
So you're comparing some of these Muslims to rabid dogs?
bad dogs. Oh, did you see where there's a news conference supposed to be a thing? I think it's going to be tomorrow. What's his name? Secretary of State Pompeo. No, what's it?
Would it be, what's his name?
Pompeo.
William,
What is Secretary
Barr?
of State? Barr it is Pompeo.
Justice.
Yeah, Pompeo. He's going to sign supposedly a peace agreement with the Taliban. They're supposed to sign a peace treaty.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So,
I thought we didn't negotiate with the terrorists.
well, it's a de facto government.
Didn't they first
That's
have
what
like
makes it-
a week of non-fire or something that we had?
They did a ceasefire or something,
Ceasefire.
supposedly.
or-
And this will allow us hopefully to get out of Afghanistan, which, it was right when we went in there because of, them with their involvement with Osama, bin Laden, and all. But we've been in there since 2002.
Yeah.
2 more years, it'd be 20 years.
So this is the possibility for the Taliban leaders not to be taken out by drone.
Yeah. Somebody did
It's their health insurance.
somebody had done a spoof on that song, the banana song, come Mr. Tallyman, tally me bananas, it's come Mr. Taliban.
Okay.
Give me Bin Laden, or something. It's like, Air Force come and they flatten your home, at the bottom. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that.
And obviously, if they do more terrorist activity afterwards, they'll be held to account, one would hope.
Mhm.
It cut down a whole lot of expenses getting rid of it, shutting down that army over there. Because we was in Korea, we was in a little skirmish here for about 3 days.
Oh,
And they figured that they spent $42 billion in that 3 or 4 days.
All up in smoke. It is interesting when they calculate that stuff, because certain fixed prices are going to be there regardless, the amount of money it costs in terms of the personnel that are there. But yeah, expending some of the weapons and things that they do really adds up pretty quick. So, but no, definitely, there's no shortage of places to reroute troops and things to, and plus, a lot of them need to have a chance to get some rest because they've just been overtaxed. So,
You see this event coming up soon, Red Green Access, what is it? Is it an online thing?
No,
This one will be-
this is a real one.
it'll be here in Brecksville.
Yeah, next
When is
Monday. Is it this coming Monday or
No,
no?
a week from a week from Monday.
Monday,
It's
March
the-
9?
Yeah,
And what was the time on that? Because you say they're gonna
7
be on the
o'clock.
radio
Yeah.
too?
Well, the guy that's speaking there's gonna be with the radio, on the radio with me on the 6th, on Friday the 6th, but
And
He's
what
speaking of-
time on the 6th are you gonna be on the radio?
1:30.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, and then the meeting up here is at 7 o'clock on Monday, March 9th, 7 o'clock in the evening.
Unannounced location until you contact them.
Right, right, because they wanna kinda,
Know who's coming.
yeah.
So you gotta get online for that?
Yeah, you have to send them an email at that,
RGA,
RGA at,
eaglefiremail.com.
I'm gonna double check that, yeah, eaglefiremail .com. RGA at eaglefiremail.com. Then what they'll do is they'll respond back to you and then they'll give you the link so that you can get on their mailing list then. And once you get on their mailing list, hopefully you'll get future things.
Now on Eagle Fire Mail, is it, MAIL, like mail, or
Yeah.
MALE?
Yeah, MAIL.
Alright,
Mail,
thanks.
email. So,
Eagle Fire Mail?
yeah. Yeah. And so it ought to be interesting. Now, they were having problems when they were affiliated with Act for America because Southern Poverty Law Center had labeled that a hate group. And
Falsely
they were-
labeled.
Yeah,
Well, what's gonna keep them from labeling this thing?
well, because nobody knows what RGA, you just see RGA, it's just like initials. But see, they're previous, because of their affiliation with ACT, they had to have ACT in there. So they were ACT Cleveland. And that would trigger things online where their posts were being posted, their emails were being, deep sixed and not going to the people they sent them to, and all kinds of problems. So,
Is Brigitte Gabriel still affiliated with that?
Actor, is she
the,
affiliated with?
America thing?
yeah, she's
It's
still,
still,
yeah, and they're still going strong, but also Act America, because of their incorporation status, they can't actually weigh in on legislation and like make recommendations, and they can inform, but they can't say you need to call your congressman and tell them to kill this legislation, or tell them to get behind this, or you need to get out and vote for this person, not that person. But their structure now, they have the ability to do that. So they
So
can,
this isn't a corporation, RGA is not,
no, they're not
they're
incorporated
not
like
a
that.
501(c)(3) or
No,
something.
or however the act was set up. So they can endorse people, they can tell you, go out and vote for this, or go out and call your congressman on this, or whatever.
They can have an opinion and be vocal about it?
Yes, much more freely. Plus, they can have a broader area of things they can cover than what Act Cleveland would like them, or Act America would like them to cover. They can go into other areas, like this guy that's going to be with them talking about global government and global religion. That's not something that Act America really wants to delve into. So this one here, though, is something they like to delve into. And so it's, yeah. So hopefully it'll work out well. Some of them are online things. They had one last Sunday night that was online, but that was Sunday evening while we were during our evening service.
So the Goldsteins and Ramada have left ACT, and they're now going with Red Green Access.
Yeah. So that's what they're with now. So basically, it's the same group of people locally, just freed up with a little more liberty in what they can do. any rate, it's after 9, so why don't we go ahead and pray? Heavenly Father, we want to thank you again for the fellowship we can enjoy this evening and kind of the eclectic series of topics, talk about different things tonight, Lord. We just pray that you help us, Lord, to continue working and developing a biblical worldview, Lord, that we can look at the things that are happening in the world around us, and greater understanding, greater wisdom in regards to what's happening. And we just pray that you will continue to bless, watch over us as we leave here tonight, keep us safe on the roads, bless the day tomorrow, and then we just pray that you bless Sunday for your glory, and just thank you in Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name.
Amen. All right. Well, good night. We're signing off, so God bless.
You two guys